I'm Grace Jung, and welcome to K-Drama School. Class is now in session. Today's drama is a little show called What Happened in Bali. It's also written out as Something Happened in Bali, but the Korean title is 발리에서 생긴 일, which literally translates as The Thing That Happened in Bali. And this is an SBS drama, SBS standing for Seoul Broadcasting System. And the show came out in 2004 in the winter, and it stars some huge names. At the time, they were nobodies, but it stars some really big names like So Ji-sub, Cho In-sung, Park Ye-jin, and Ha Ji-won. And if you guys saw that not so very good drama on Netflix called Chocolate, you've seen Ha Ji-won. You've seen her. She's the girl who's crying like every 3 minutes on that show. And Ha Ji-won does exactly that on this show. She's just crying constantly. There's a 15-year difference between What Happened in Bali and Chocolate, and Ha Ji-won is doing the exact same thing. It's quite amazing. Ha Ji-won plays the very typical Korean drama female protagonist. She plays a girl named Lee Soo-jung, who's a 20-something-year-old orphan of working class. She was very smart, got good grades, but did not go to college because she did not have the money. And she has an older brother who's always owing money all over town to gangsters and thugs, and Soo-jung has to bail him out of trouble at all times. Jae-min is played by Cho In-sung, who is the rich guy, and Park Ye-jin plays Young-ju, the rich girl who is engaged to Jae-min. They are going to get married, but they hate each other. The only reason why they're getting married is because their rich parents want them to. Right? That's how it goes. The rich marry the rich. It's very incestuous like that. So So Ji-sub plays Kang In-wook, who is the poor guy who used to date Young-ju back in college, but Young-ju dumped him because she's a greedy little bitch. And the three of them, they meet in Bali, where Soo-jung is the tour guide. And she's taking these guys around tour, and she and Jae-min start to kind of dig each other. Well, actually, it's more one-sided. Jae-min starts to show some affections towards him, and he's such an asshole. Like, he's very jealous of the fact that In-wook and Young-ju used to have a relationship in the past, and he tries to sleep with Soo-jung in order to get back at them, right? Real classy stuff. Real gentlemanly-like stuff. And, of course, Soo-jung is not going to sleep with Jae-min because that's not the virtuous thing to do. All right, that's not what a virtuous female protagonist does. They do not sleep for money. So she gets kicked out, and she's, of course, crying. And then Soo-jung gets scammed by her own boss, who owes her a bunch of money. Like, he's really backed up in payments with her paychecks. He hasn't been paying her. Soo-jung also saved up something like $10,000, after working for several years, and her boss steals all of her money and jets off to who knows where. He just disappears, and she's just left on her own. And so she returns to Korea, and she starts crashing at her friend Mihi's place, which just so happens to be right next door to where Kang In-wook is living, the poor guy. And Kang In-wook starts to kind of fall in love with Soo-jung. It's quite interesting. It might be because he and Soo-jung kind of come from the shits. They have this poor working class background. I also think that it's because Soo-jung reminds him a lot of his own mother. His mother was this poor woman. She got pregnant by an asshole who used to beat the shit out of her, and now she runs a restaurant. She's still very poor working class. She's still getting, tied up with bad men, and In-wook is just so sick of seeing that, But anyway, Soo-jung needs a lot of money because she's been scammed out of everything. She's crashing at a friend's place. She doesn't have anywhere to go. She has nothing to show for. So Soo-jung needs money, so she goes to Jae-min to get a job, and Jae-min gives her a job as an administrator. And then Jae-min's dad finds out, the chairman of the company Pax Group where he works at, and he fires her. Yeah. It's real unfair. You see this time and time again, but Sujung gets screwed pretty much by every single person on this show. Like, she gets slapped in the face by Chaemin's mom, and she gets the shit kicked out of her by Youngju's mom. She ends up finding the boss who scammed her out of all of her money, but like turns out he's a bum and he can't give her back any of the money he owes her. And then in the meantime, Sujung has this older brother who keeps showing up for money from her. You know, it's just a nightmare. And on top of that, Jaemin keeps showing up at her house unannounced. You know, he's just like usually drunk and belligerent. It just like bangs on her door, screaming her name, throwing a fit. And you know, like Kang In-wook's right next door, so he hears it. And every time he sees Jaemin shows up, he gets jealous and he starts treating Sujung like crap. And it's awful. You know, she just can't catch a break. And in the meantime, Youngju fucking hates all three of them because she's engaged to one of the guys. She used to date the other one, and neither of them are into her anymore. You know, they both want Sujung. So Youngju hates her and gives Sujung a lot of grief for it. So this girl just can't catch a break. Sujung's life sucks. Honestly, it's no wonder that 15 years later, you know, Hajiwon is in a totally different drama, but she's still crying. I feel like she's still crying in a different drama 15 years later because she can't get over the bullshit that she had to deal with all throughout what happened in Bali. It's just never ending for her. This melodrama formula for this young female protagonist, right, who's an orphan, who's working class, it's the baseline for a lot of Korean dramas. You'll see it time and time again. The girls, they tend to be poor but virtuous, and they're hardworking, but all the odds are stacked up against her, and there's a rich guy dangling freedom before her eyes, but there's still obstacles in the way. That obstacle being class difference, and the fact that, you know, like the rich guy's parents, they couldn't stand the idea of him marrying a poor girl, right? I mean, it's inconceivable that a rich person would help out a poor person. It's just nonsense to rich people, right? So she's dealing with a lot of rejection, and that's a constant theme throughout these Korean dramas. But what happened in Bali is slightly different from some of the other shows I've seen. It's got a very tragic ending. And like I said, from episode 1, there's going to be spoilers in every single episode. So spoiler alert, it's got a very tragic ending, okay? So Kang In-wook scams Jaemin out of his assets through some financial scheme. I don't know the ins and outs. It's very complicated. But he ends up stealing all their money. And then he bounces off to Bali and he takes Sujung with him. So, ta-da, in the end, Sujung ends up choosing Kang In-wook, right? But once she gets to Bali, she realizes that she loves Jaemin, which is so fucked up, right? And, you know, while Sujung and In-wook are in bed together, Jaemin shows up with a gun, and then he ends up shooting and killing the both of them. It's so fucked up. It's awful. I mentioned in episode 1 of this podcast that the majority of Korean dramas are typically written by women, and this is true. But What Happened in Bali is one of the few romantic Korean dramas that was written by a man named Kim Gi-ho. And Kim Gi-ho actually co-wrote it with another TV screenwriter, a woman named Hwang Sung-yeon. And Kim Gi-ho is usually co-writing his screenplays with his wife, Lee Sun-mi. They collaborate often. In fact, 8 years after What Happened in Bali released, and that was a huge success, in 2012, they released a TV project that they co-wrote together called Fashion King. And it was panned by critics and fans. Nobody liked it, did very poor in the ratings. But thematically, it's got a lot of similarities between these two shows. Also, Fashion King stars some huge names. It's got Yoo Ah-in in it. It's got Shin Se-kyung in it. And Kwon Yuri from Girls' Generation. So if you want to check it out, I would say check it out. It's partially set in New York. It's got a lot of problems. It's not the best show, but I mean, I found it entertaining at the time. The one character I did like on Fashion King is the character Bong-suk, who is played by the very hilarious Yoo Chae-young. She's very funny in this show, and I felt like this show needed some funny characters. And Yoo Chae-young was a singer and comedic actress, but she unfortunately died of stomach cancer in 2014, a couple of years after Fashion King was released. But you see a similar character in What Happened in Bali. She's just as funny. Her name's Mi-hee. Like I said, she's Sujung's roommate, and she's played by Shin-yi, who's a hilarious actress. She's really great on this show and offers a lot of that comic relief that What Happened in Bali has, like the heaviness that What Happened in Bali has. The thing I hated about What Happened in Bali, and I'll unfairly attribute this to the fact that a man co-wrote this, is that Sujung gets mistreated by every single man on this show. Just they all do as they please. Like her brother's treating her like crap. Her boss steals from her. The chairman of the company mistreats her. And the two guys who claim to love her are treating her the worst. They're always forced kissing her in the face, a problem that I see in almost every single Korean drama, right? Grabbing her by the wrist, forced kissing her in the face. It's so fucked up. They're always trying to sleep with Sujung, and they don't even check in to see if she likes them back. They're just trying to like get their hands down her pants. It's really awful. And then you see like the gangsters and thugs, of course, right? That are involved with her older brother, and they're always coming after her, trying to get some money off of her or making her work, right? Like working as a hostess at bars and norebangs, serving booze to male clientele. It's awful. And Sujung's roommate Mihi is also subject to similar forms of harassment, right? She's trying to be an actress, but the directors take advantage of her. They treat her like crap, and she needs to work part-time at norebangs as a hostess in order to get by. So this gratuitous prostitution of female bodies and souls on this program is something I really could not stand. I couldn't see the point of it all. And the fact that a rich man shoots and murders her in the end is like, really, it's just really too much, It's just like, what, you have uncontrollable jealousy, so you're gonna shoot and kill the woman you claim to love? It's just ridiculous. I really had a hard time following a lot of the characters' motives on this show. The one character whose motives were somewhat clear is Kang In-wook's, and he's this well-educated guy who quotes Gramsci's prison notebooks. He knows things about hegemony, and he's this very charming, handsome fella, and everybody likes him, Everybody likes him at work. Sujung is charmed by him, but it's unfortunate that, his life ends up so tragically in the end. There's a lot of male toxicity in this drama, like angry and abusive fathering. This is something I also saw on Fashion King. Jaemin's dad, the chairman of Pax Group, is always wielding a golf club and hitting Jaemin in the head with it, which is like, no wonder your son is so out of whack. You're always beating him in the face with the golf club. Like, how do you think he's gonna think straight? And like you see this kind of thing from a lot of Korean dads. It's like they're always wielding golf clubs as weapons, and it's very tacky. And I really wish it would stop already. Just stop. Thematically, the fact that a character like Sujung gets used over and over again, there's a reason for it. Okay, so this kind of young female protagonist was found in a lot of fiction, modern Korean fiction, written throughout the Japanese colonial era, right around the time when Korea was just starting to industrialize. So between 1910 and 1945 during occupation, and then throughout the Korean War between 1950 and 1953, and then even in the post-Korean War years, right, through the 60s and 70s. That's really when this hard industrialization was happening in Korea. And Ruth Barraclaw, she writes about these kinds of literatures that were cropping up during this time in her book, Factory Girl Literature. So the factory girl literature is about young women who's like laboring to make ends meet. They have a lot of people who are relying on her, usually her family, sometimes her children, sometimes her in-laws, sometimes her parents. And she's oftentimes single because her husband either died or he's a deadbeat or he's off, doing things with people he shouldn't be doing things with. And the factory boss is always trying to get in her pants because she's single and she doesn't have a man to protect her, right? So she, of course, has to get harassed by a factory boss. So she's always working and undereducated and vulnerable to society. So you see these kinds of women who represent the female labor force behind the textiles industry, which was cropping up in the 1920s and 30s. In fact, the female protagonist played by Shin Se-kyung on Fashion King, she is also somebody who works in the textiles and fashion industry in Dongdaemun. After liberation in 1945, followed by the Korea demarcation, followed by the war, and in the 1960s and 70s, a lot of women were working in manufacturing. They were producing clothes. They were producing a lot of electronics, a lot of the radios and TV sets that people were starting to own in the 60s particularly. And a lot of the children's goods, like candy and toys, right? In fact, my mother was one of these factory girls who were working in the late 1970s. She was a yeogong. Yogong meaning a female laborer, particularly in the factories. And she was sent away from her farm town home in Hapcheon in Gyeongsangnam-do to make ends meet. When she was a teenager, she was about 14, 15 years old, and she was sent away to work at a factory where she had room and board and some very basic education. But her primary task was to work. And she sent home a lot of money to support her younger siblings, her five younger siblings, and her parents. Bearclaw argues that alongside these factory girls working came about a lot of these literatures. And these literatures document the plight of young girls working in urban settings, but it also demonstrates a lot of the political and sexual liberation that these women were experiencing, especially in these urban settings. So these types of storylines continued through the 80s and 90s, and I'm saying that they also started to spill over and leak into these TV drama narratives. I think TV writers like Kim Gi-hong and Lee Sun-mi were influenced by factory girl literature. If you look at their 1997 show that they co-wrote called 별은 내 가슴에 or Star in My Heart, the protagonist in that show is also a seamstress. And what's interesting about factory girl literature is that the protagonist is frequently used and abused by her family, by society in order to pay off other people's debts. It's never her own debt. It's always somebody else's debt. And she has no agency. You know, she really doesn't have any of her own kind of choices to make in life. And she gets used up and thrown away time and time again. And I find that a bit frustrating and unfortunate. Anyway, if you want to learn more about the factory girl protagonist in literature and perhaps, implement that into your understanding of Korean dramas and class issues and gender issues, I would check out Ruth Barraclaw's book, Factory Girl Literature. Today's guest is Erik Escobar, and he's an American stand-up comedian based in Los Angeles. He performed on NBC's Last Comic Standing. He was also on Fox's I Can See Your Voice. He also gave a really great TED Talk at Carroll College in March 2020 about living a fulfilling life through humor. And he's a really great person, great comedian, overall wonderful human being. So let's talk to Erik Escobar. But you lost a lot of weight during this pandemic, which is unusual because a lot of other people just put on weight. What happened?
I did. I think my biggest was like pushing 290 ish. Now I'm like between like
Uh,
190 and 200. Like I like live in that zone.
wow.
As soon as I got under 200, I was like, you know what? I don't care. I'm gonna eat what I'm gonna eat. Like that was kind of like just
Yeah.
the goal. Like just get under this number.
Yeah. Wow. So you lost 100 pounds.
Yeah, give or take. Some days 90. If I want to treat myself to some pizza pie.
Yeah. What? That's crazy. How did you? Well, congratulations. I mean, you look great. Do you feel good?
Thank you. Yes. I feel like I don't know. I think for so long I was so heavy and I lived such a horrible lifestyle that like
Uh
that
huh.
was my norm. So I didn't realize like waking up and being like, "Oh God, life." I didn't realize that was like not a thing. Now I wake up and I'm
Yeah.
like, "Oh wow, I'm awake. This is exciting." I'm just like having little serendipitous surprises every day of like, "Oh, this is what it's like to I can walk a block and not pass out. This is wonderful." In January, February ish, right before the pandemic, I got diagnosed with high blood pressure. And I was like, all right, that is what it is. Like, I'm half Filipino, half Mexican.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone on both sides has high blood pressure. It's just a thing.
Yeah.
But I really don't want to take medication every day if I don't have to.
Uh
You know
huh.
what I mean? Like that like freaked me out when it was like, all right, you're getting to a point in your life where it's like, oh, for the rest of your life you'll have to be like, do I have my meds on me? Like, where are
Mm-hmm.
my meds? Like, always, I can't like get off them. And also, right around when I found that out, like, I found out like a family friend passed away because they like cold turkeyed their high blood medication.
Ah, shit.
So I was already like, if I go down this journey, this is gonna be crazy.
Oh.
So I kind of was just like, if I don't want to be on it, I guess I just got to lose weight. So I was kind of eating better. I was kind of exercising. But ultimately, I think the thing that really helped out is when the pandemic hit, I wasn't like all these road dates got canceled,
Right.
which is fine. I get it. Let's stay safe. Let's be good. But I feel like when I was spending so much time not at home, I was constantly eating horrible. When you're on the road, you eat horrible. You have Taco
Horribly.
Bell every day.
Every
You
day.
drink every day.
Every
And
day.
it was just like getting off the road, I think kind of like kick started this like, oh, you're eating better now just because you're not like going to McDonald's 8 times a week.
Yeah, that's the rough thing about being on the road in the States is that there's really nothing to
Yeah.
eat but shit. Like it's really awful and like it really is more of a testament to like America and really its eating habits and its food establishment and food industry. It's awful because like when I went to
Yeah.
Arkansas it was pretty much like that and I was just like I would make efforts, you know? And like the comic I was with, I was just like, can we try and eat something healthy today? You know? So we would go and like eke out these cafes that have like an avocado
Like
toast
a
and you
side
know,
salad.
yeah, like which is like what, like an iceberg lettuce and a tomato and ranch dressing, you know? But I mean, it's there. It's just you have to really eke it out because otherwise, and especially when you're on the road, like you're so tired because you're jet lagged. You know, you're performing like late at night. You sleep in, and you know, you just want to like grab whatever's closest to you, and it's like that's usually fast food. And I think also like being on the road, being away from home, like you know, you try to like comfort your homesickness by stuffing your face with a
100%.
lot of bullshit and yeah, a lot of that's going on. So, well, good for you, man. And I hope you stay on it because that's hard. You know, I think it's really hard to lose weight um, unless like it's like that, unless it feels
Yeah.
life threatening, you know, or if it feels like it's suddenly you're like, oh, it's like, oh, this is my lifestyle now. Like being overweight is now my lifestyle. And until you have that reckoning, it's hard to just be like, okay, I'm gonna try and you know change my habits because eating is a habit, right? Like that
Well,
whole thing is a
as a
habit.
human being, I can recognize in myself like whatever I do, I like really enjoy and almost need to take everything I can from that experience, if that makes sense. Like if I'm going on the road to, I don't know, let's call it like Seattle. Like I don't want to just do Seattle. It's like, you know how it is. Like, yo, what's going on in Spokane? What's going on in Tacoma? Oh, the day before I could go over here. Let's do here. Like everything I do, I really want to take everything that I can get from that and like cherish and run with it. And I feel like my whole life I felt the weight about food, where it's like every meal's got to be fun. Oh, we're gonna have like a big breakfast here. Let's get like this special thing over here for lunch. Oh, dinner over here. Let's get a cool snack. And I think it really comes down to like food is just fuel. You know what I mean? You don't have to get like a bunch of crazy things or spend your money on like every meal to eat out just because it's like, oh, let's like take it all. And it's like, no, you're just hungry. Like it doesn't have to be like a crazy like. Don't get a large pizza. Just get like a taco or get a salad. You know what I mean?
Right, right. Yeah, I think it takes a lot of willpower to not get a whole pizza for yourself and just get
Yeah,
a taco, you know, because like you know even me like I'm obsessed with food. I love food. You know, Koreans like they eat a huge variety every time, right? Like they're the whole panchan thing is a whole ritual. Like panchan, it's like when I have just a sandwich I don't
yeah.
feel satisfied, you know? It's like I get it. It's once but it's like one thing. Whereas Koreans, they have at least like 25 things, you know, per meal, right? It's like there's a soup, there's the rice. If you're gonna have the rice, oh, you have to have banchan, you have to have the kimchi, you have to have the spinach, you have to have the whatever, like all these varieties on the table, and they just have this really diverse way of eating, like you know, and it's like this harmonious. It's like a part of their ritual, their culture, their whole thing, and it's like because I was so used to that growing up, and then you know when I started feeding myself like as an adult, you know I keep striving for that. I'm keep
Yeah.
chasing after that, but it with non-Korean foods, and so I get it. I understand when people are like, let's get like five appetizers, you know, like let's get right, and it's like, oh, you do that, you're gonna pig out, you're gonna feel like shit, you know. It's you're right. It's a whole it's a
I forgot what
habit
it was.
thing.
I was gonna say I feel like it's so fascinating how I also love food and I also love like whenever there's something new, it's like, oh, how do you guys come up with that? What's the origin of this? Where are you taking it from?
Yeah.
And I remember we went to like a Filipino restaurant somewhere. I think it was in LA, but I remember me and some friends we went. They were all Filipino, and they were like, "We have this special. It's like chicken with white sauce." And we're like, "Oh, okay, that
Uh-huh.
sounds tasty. Let's just get one for the table." And we get it, and it's literally like boiled chicken with like Campbell's cream of mushroom soup like on top of it. And I'm like, this is
Yeah.
gross. Like, no, it's like what's going on? And we were talking with our server, and I guess it's like a nice Filipino dish because back when the war happened, they would give Filipino like the U.S. military people would give Filipinos like, oh, here's this soup, or here's this bowl of Campbell's, or here's this whatever, and they're like, oh, let's make
Exactly.
something with it. So they would just put it on top of their
Exactly.
chicken. And it's so crazy how
Yep.
that for them is a delicacy, and for us it was like, oh, whatever. But like that's how it came to be. I think that's it's
Exactly.
same with isn't banh mi? I want to say banh mi
Yep.
sandwiches were made because the French
Mhm.
went down and they're
Mhm.
like, hey, this looks
Mhm.
good. Let's put it in bread.
Let's put it in some fucking baguette.
Put it in a
Exactly.
baguette. Let's
Fucking
go. Sorry.
yeah. Yeah, fucking French people, man. Like these fucking whites bringing the bread into the Asian countries, causing indigestion everywhere, you know? Fucking heartburn. Like I love bread. I'm obsessed with bread, but I know that it's not good for my bodily constitution because I get heartburn, I feel sleepy, you know, I get my face gets bloated. I feel like crap when I eat too much bread and it's just but I don't have that feeling with rice. I could eat as much rice as I want.
I agree. I feel like every time, actually, I think a big part of my weight loss was it wasn't consciously being like, oh, I'm gonna be keto or I'm gonna be paleo. It was really just like, yo, instead of getting, like a sandwich or instead of, whatever, let's just get a salad. Kind of, sort of, just like keeping my bread intake like in check. But I also went hog wild on rice. You know what I mean? Like I was like, I'm still eating rice. I'm gonna be careful with bread, but also eat the rice. And like I lost a ton of weight. It was like the bread that was like the factor that was like,
Yeah. I think bread does, it does bloat up people, especially if their constitution it's not fit for wheat flour, you know? Like there's all this talk about like lactose intolerance, right? And like I have this she's Danish, but she's a Korean adoptee,
okay,
grew up in Copenhagen, and she wrote this paper about lactose intolerance and these Korean adoptees who were forced to eat a lot of dairy growing up, right? Because
whoa, because that's in
in
the culture,
in
yeah.
that's the culture in Denmark. They eat a lot of dairy,
More
like
like the
in
culture
almost.
because it's milk. All
Oh
right,
my,
let's keep going.
that's you gotta be you. You gotta be you. That's a very Eric Escobar kind of joke. You gotta be you. You gotta do you. But yeah, she wrote this paper about like how this term lactose intolerance, right? It basically it's actually a xenophobic term. It makes everybody whose bodily constitution doesn't fit a white person's constitution, it makes them a sick person. It makes them an invalid, right? With this term intolerance. And then nowadays, you got white people saying they're gluten free or they're gluten intolerant.
Yeah,
And it's like, are you gluten intolerant or are you just I don't know, like it
just
feels
feel
weird
lazy. Yeah.
because I'm like, yeah, I'm like it's the Asians and like it's like it's the people from like Asia who are like gluten intolerant technically. Like we're not used to eating dairy foods. We're not used to eating wheat flour foods, like that's not natural to our diet. It's not natural to our land.
Mhm.
And that's how it's been. But suddenly they're like, "Oh, we're gluten intolerant." But it's like, are you gluten intolerant, or are you just trying to lose weight? Are you just trying to get away from, bleached flour, wheat carbs, and just trying to lose weight? Like, I don't know. It's a weird thing.
I think a lot of people at the end of the day, people just like love to have control and they love to be in power and they love to feel like their
Mm.
status is elevated. And I think anytime labels are brought into an equation, someone is definitely feeling more validated because they now have a label to like give their opinion like some cred. And then there's also people on the other side where it's like, wait, now we feel boxed in, or now we feel excluded from like a label, which is like super annoying. And I think we're in the era of labels, and people,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? They're just like, oh, well, I just don't like to eat bread as much. But if I say I'm gluten intolerant or whatever, like now it's like, oh, I'm part of a community that has this. And it's like, yeah, let's just like keep everything in mind. And I don't know.
It's so funny. It's like because white people are so sick of being just called white people and they're not called like POC and like,
Yeah,
all this other shit. They're
we
like,
need to
"Oh, let's
create our
let's
own
use."
boxes.
Yeah, like I've recently been thinking a lot about like decolonization and decoloniality, just like
Yeah.
physically experiencing that and spiritually experiencing that. Like I'm not, I haven't been a Christian for many years now, but like, just kind of returning to Buddhism just to reconnect with like my Eastern roots and Eastern spirituality that way and getting further away from like, Western Christianity and like getting further away from bread and like, you
Hmm.
know, waffles and all the things that I love and going more towards like rice and fish and like greens just to be like, yeah, like fuck the white man, like
But
I'm
it's
gonna live
true
my
because like
life.
when I look at a lot of Filipinos and a lot of Filipino Americans, like, yo, for years we were eating like guavas and coconuts, like
Yep.
fish and rice. And then, we get very colonized for a very long time. And then there's this long period where we're eating things that we're like not used to, or we're like adapting our food to the new way. It's like
Yes.
when whoever invented deep frying things and showed it to the Filipinos, they just screwed us. You know what I mean? Like we're all super healthy, and now we all have like diabetes, like 45 years old, because someone showed us how to deep fry everything. So now we do, and we're like, I'll blame them. But it's crazy because when we look at like just the way certain areas of the world are consuming food, maybe what the levels of healthiness or unhealthiness that they are,
Uh-huh.
a lot of it was, they're not eating the decolonial versions of what they had
Yep.
hundreds of years ago. They're eating like, oh, milk? We haven't tried to put this in our diet. Let's try to put it in our diet now. Like, that's not the best idea.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, what is this? Let's just put it in our bodies. Let's just go and do it. It looks all right. The whites are having it. And like that's the whole like global hierarchy thing. It's like
Mm-hmm.
as you were talking about with the Campbell's soup thing. It's like it's Campbell's soup. It's canned processed goods and it's not at all like considered quality. It's
Yeah.
actually, lack of quality. It's like an emergency thing. And you take it to the Philippines and the Filipinos are like, "Oh, look at this sacred white man's food."
Yeah.
It is it's like, "Oh, this it's got that labeling, that branding of the white man." And they're like, "Oh, let's elevate this. Like this is elevated food. This is quality food." You know, it's a whole global hierarchy thing. That's all it is.
It is. And it's wild now. Now that's how we have banh mi sandwiches. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And like there's
Which are
just
so good.
regular
I mean,
things like in our lives where it's like the
ugh.
the journey of them to get there. It's like wow, like either we shouldn't have this or this is something that was recently introduced to like my community or like my
Mm-hmm.
culture.
Like, did you grow up watching Korean dramas?
I know nothing about them other than every time I meet someone who's into Korean dramas and they tell me, they're like, oh man, it's an intense world. There's a lot going on. I feel like you're either not, you don't watch them or you're like a fan. I feel like there's
Your
very few
mom,
middle ground.
your mom never watched them.
Never, not really. She was just kind of like, oh,
It's out there.
Frasier. I don't know. Very westernized lady.
Well, what TV shows did you watch growing up?
TV for me, I think was very exciting because like I would be able to sneak downstairs and watch TV after my parents fell asleep. So for me, it was a very like fun, like rebellious activity
Mm,
where I'm like, oh, look what I'm doing. I'm watching TV and I'm not supposed to. But because of
hmm.
the time slot, I like watched a lot of weird TV growing up. Like I
Like
love,
what?
I love like NBC sitcoms, like Just Shoot Me, Suddenly
Uh huh.
Susan. Let's go some
Wow.
talk radio, some Caroline in the City. Uh,
Wow.
Will and Grace is a must. Friends, I love Friends. I
Wow.
really do hate. Um, yeah, I like those types of TV shows because you can just leave them on and just like
Yeah.
go about your day.
And chill. Yeah. Sitcoms, I guess, for the most part.
Mhm. What about you? Are you like Korean drama all the time, every day, or do you like just pepper it in amongst other stuff?
No, I'm kind of similar, like I guess that would be the one consistent thing that I was like practicing decoloniality in that I was watching Korean dramas since birth and
Or
never stopped, you know? There's this whole history with like Korean dramas and how it came to the US and all of that, but it has mostly to do with Korean immigrants and them creating a system so that they can watch content based back in the motherland, you know? And it's yeah, and actually the broadcasters in Korea they make a lot of money from us. So, good for them. But
do you
yeah, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, do you feel like Korean dramas are something that you like because you like grew up with it, or do you think you like it because it's like this is great TV? Like for me, like with wrestling, I feel like I grew up with wrestling, and that's why I still watch wrestling. But then there was a period where I didn't watch it, and then I got into it because I'm like, oh, this is just like cool. You know what I mean? Like, how where are Korean dramas for you on that scale?
It's for me like I do think it's good TV. Not everybody feels this way because it is very soapy, but I mean that's I just feel like it's a form of, you know, it's gender discrimination, right? Like to say that soap operas and daytime dramas are trash, you know, like I study cinema media studies at UCLA and that's a whole like area of study. Like it's just TV studies people defending themselves, you know, and
Yeah,
like TV studies people defending television. It's like a whole like air it's a whole field in and of itself. Like to be like, oh, like film, like cinema is masculine and serious and it's quality and it's highbrow and all this nonsense. And then TV is trash, it's garbage, it rots the brain, it's junk food, it's, you know, and it's like, it's this whole like debate. But I, I, I wasn't born in the States. I was born in Korea and, you know, just television was just all Korean television growing up. And then when we moved to Brooklyn when I was like in kindergarten, and my mom was renting these VHS tapes at these video stores in New York and
mhm.
bringing them home, like that was very comforting for me because like they're speaking my language, they look like me, you know? So like whereas you know like you know a lot of Asian American and Asian Americans Asian America is like a big category in and of itself, right? It's like a very diverse category, like splintered with like
Yes.
Filipinos and you know like Koreans, Japanese, Chinese, it's like very
Russians, like what? Yeah, I guess you're part of the
Kazakhstan.
crew.
Yeah, so like it's very splintered, but for me like because I had Korean dramas growing up, I don't really have that hang up of feeling like oh like media representation is lacking of Asian, like I don't have that
Fascinating.
anger. I don't have that hang up because I've always seen myself on
Yeah.
Korean dramas, you know? And not just Korean dramas, like my parents rented me Korean sitcoms, Korean variety shows, you know? Like that's what my dissertation is about. I wrote about Korean comedy variety shows, you know? So and you know, when I talk to other Korean Americans, like they all know my references, you know? So it's like definitely a community building thing, it's identity building thing. So that's what Korean dramas mean to me. And I watch a lot of Korean dramas, like a lot. But I also watched Friends. You know, I
Yeah.
watched like a lot of black sitcoms, like Parenthood and like
Oh
Williams
hell yeah.
Brothers, and you know, watched a lot of that. And
Hang with Mr. Cooper. That's always a classic.
see that I didn't see. Like most of the shows that you mentioned, I did
Uh,
not see. Other than like Friends and like Frasier, which I recognize, like the rest, I was just like, I have no idea what he's talking. Like the Susan thing, I was like, what? Like,
they
these
were
are
all like to mid '90s shows. They got like dropped, but they were still like in syndication. So it was just like
yeah,
the late night hour of like no one's watching
that's
TV
what it
around
is.
here, or they're
Yeah,
watching like Johnny Carson or Letterman or Leno. Like we'll just throw this bowl.
right. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it's good stuff. And I also want to say it's fascinating to hear your perspective as someone who came up with a lot of like Asian media, and you're like, I saw myself, and I like that was just a thing I saw, so I knew it was like a possibility because I remember the moment. I think I was like in I think it was a freshman in high school, and a friend turned me on to Rex Navarrete, who's a amazing Filipino comedian, and it was crazy because I remember in that moment being like, "Oh my god, I could do that. He's doing that. I could do that." And it was a weird like aha moment, and it's like, wow, that was in my brain. You know what I mean? So I can see both perspectives of people where it's like, oh, okay, like I either came up with it or it was this thing that like inspired me. But I think it's really great that both of us we were able to have some type of like Asian influence thing that we could see because I think it kind of put us on the track where we are today. You know what I mean? We're podcasting, we're doing comedy, we're doing amazing things because we know we can. And it sucks that a lot of other people who are minorities don't feel that way. I think sometimes because they don't see that.
It does suck. And I think the only reason why they feel that way is because, they don't realize that what's on the other side, Like I had to make an active effort to go
Agreed.
and find my identity or find what feels like me, Like even in college, like what did you study in college?
For my undergrad, I did it was like business and the arts. So I took a lot of like music, art, film, theater, and then I also did like management. And then for grad school, I just got my MFA in actually comedy theory. Crazy.
Comedy theory MFA? I've never heard of this. Where did you get that?
From Goddard College. They're based in Vermont, but I was doing one of their programs over in Washington. You go there for about a week in person,
Yeah.
pre quarantine, obviously. And then basically you would do kind of like a semi hybrid online program where you go back home, you just send in
Yeah.
packets every like 2, 3 weeks. So whatever study plan you created within that week. But that week could be completely different. Like I remember for my first actual like semester, I did kind of like a history of comedy timeline, going from like vaudeville to MCs and like bars to
Wow.
all these like crazy things to comedy today. And then the next semester, it was like nothing
Mm.
but jokes. Like there was like no research, there was no like theory, there was no like let's do it. It was like just write 100
Oh my
jokes for
God.
your packet, and I was like, okay, let's go. So it was cool because every semester was different, and at the same time, it was like other artists with different tools. Where it's like, even though you're an actor and I'm a comic, you're doing some funny stuff, and I like the way you're doing it. So I can kind of pull from like that thing and like
Right.
throw it into mine, and I loved it. I love
Wow.
Goddard. It was
That
the
is
best.
so fascinating. MFA in comedy theory. Nobody gets to say that but you, really.
Um, yeah, but I'm also the only one saying it. So what's the benefit?
I think it's great.
He has an MMA in comedy. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's also an unemployment. I'm pretty. Are you enjoying your program? Because I feel like
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
ever since I got my MFA, and my MFA was kind of like that's the last school thing I'm gonna do. I got my master's, chilling. I like school. I don't like it enough to go back. I've kind of been romancing the idea of like if I'm gonna go for it again, a PhD is kind of like the next. Bloop, bloop. But it's
Do
so
it.
intimidating to even approach
It's
a
not.
level of
Well, I love it. Because I mean, if you enjoyed like studying, comedy theory, then keep doing it and then just go get a PhD, I would say, because I I was working. I was working for like close to 4 or 5 years in film production and distribution back in New York. And when I was working in distribution, I hated like going to an office 9 to 5. I hated myself. I hated everybody around me. And it kind of ruined movies for me for a little while. Like there's a little bit of trauma there. Like I went into work at a distribution company that I admired since I was like in college. I used to go to all the indie movie theaters around New York and like watch their films. And whenever I would see their logo pop up, I'd be like, I want to work there. And then I landed that job and it was like, oh, dream job. And I fucking hated it. It was a nightmare. And like I remember distinctly, like I was asking for a raise because when they hired me, my starting salary, no joke, was $28,000. Like, imagine try living in New York.
Oh, jeez.
This was not that
What
long
year was
ago,
this?
like 2012.
Like a couple years ago?
Not that
Yeah,
it's
that's like a lot.
exploitative. And honestly, you know the thing is, like, when somebody offers you a low ball like that, you're supposed to negotiate up. That's why they're lowballing you. But I didn't have neither of my parents went to college.
Yeah,
They never worked in an office. They have no idea how the system works. I didn't have any mentors who were telling me whenever they offer you a salary, you have to negotiate up. Like, they never taught me that. So I just said, okay, like, oh, you're gonna hire a
yeah.
little
I would do the same
Asian
thing.
stupid person, sure, and I just accepted, which I shouldn't have. I should have negotiated up. But like a couple years in, I felt empowered to voice myself and be like, I want a raise. And then the my boss was like, honestly, Grace, we don't really need you here, is what he said to me. Yeah. He was like, your occupation, like your job is like not that necessary, is what it was his response. And I remember going home and crying in my shower for 45 minutes straight. Like I couldn't stop crying. It just tears were flowing and like I couldn't stop crying. And it was really horrible. And then I remember like the next day I went to work. I got to the office really early and then I opened up like
Jesus.
12 different applications for graduate school for a master's program in cinema media studies, and then I applied to like all of them. I would every day after work I would leave at 5. I would walk to the library because I graduated Pace University, so I would go to my university library and I would study for the GREs until 11 because that's when they would close. So I did that for
Yeah,
3 months straight, and I took the GREs in November. I got accepted to all the schools that I wanted to get accepted to, including UCLA. My other top choice was UT Austin, but I
yeah.
chose UCLA. Came here. I was only going to do a master's, but then during my master's program, my a professor was like, Grace, I could see you getting a master's, a PhD, and going way beyond. And like that's all she had to say. And I was like, because I finished my master's in 1 year, and I was just like, do I want to go back to that hellhole of a job? And do I want to go back to working again? And the answer was a firm no. PhDs, PhD is basically it's a doctorate in philosophy. That's what you're
Yeah.
getting. You're becoming a philosopher, which is love for knowledge, love for understanding the world that you're living in and the people and who you are and who you are in the place of the world, all that. So that's all you need. I don't think you should be intimidated at all. I think you're very suited to get a PhD. No problem. Let's get into some flashcard questions. So the show that I was talking about in this episode is called What Happened in Bali, which came out in 2004. It's a very intense it's not a love triangle, it's a love square. It's like four-way like drama. Yeah, high drama. So
Sounds like a rhombus of a situation.
oh yeah, yeah. There's a rich couple, like a rich man and a rich woman. They're engaged, but they hate each other. It's like their parents want them to get
Okay.
married for business purposes, of course. And then there's a poor guy and a poor girl. The poor guy used to date the rich girl. Like they have a history back in
Okay.
college. The poor girl, she's just like a rando, but she's the protagonist. She's like an orphan, no money, no house, and the rich guy starts liking the poor girl. And
So rich guy, rich girl together.
they're
Rich
together,
girl, poor guy had a thing.
had a thing, but no
Poor
longer a
girl,
thing,
rich guy.
are now with like the rich guy's pursuing the
Okay.
poor girl. But the issue is also the poor guy is also into the I mean the poor girl. So
Well, the poor guy needs to make a choice.
no, the poor girl needs to make a choice. Poor girl.
Well, the
Because
poor guy, he's. Oh wait, no, you're right. The poor.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
because
Yes.
both the poor guy and the rich guy are coming after her, so she needs to make a choice. Um, so
Pick the rich guy.
you would think, you would think, but
You would think.
it doesn't work. Well, they briefly have a thing, and then in the end the girl chooses the poor guy because the poor guy actually makes it big. He ends up swindling the rich guy out of all of his money through this like finance scheme, and then
Now I
he
feel kind of bad for the rich guy.
and right, right. I've seen this drama at least 4 times, and I never had empathy for the rich guy, but like recently I was like, the rich guy is like, I feel really bad for him. So
Yeah,
the
he gets kind of screwed.
he gets screwed big time. So the poor guy bounces to Bali. He goes to Bali and takes the poor girl with him. And then
Okay.
the poor girl looks very sad, and the guy's like, look, I know you're here with me, but you're not trapped here, like you're not shackled here. If you ever want to leave, you're like a bird, you could take off anytime. And then this is the big finale. The rich guy shows up with a gun
In Bali?
in Bali when the couple are in bed together, and then the rich guy shoots the poor guy, and then he shoots the girl. He fucking murders her in cold blood, and the last thing she says to him is "I love you." And then the show ends.
Fuck the rich guy. I don't like the rich guy anymore. I think I had a little empathy for the rich guy. No
I
more
mean,
rich
yeah,
guy.
like all the rage and all that shit, like he took it out on them by shooting them with a gun.
Who? So what happens with rich girl?
She's, like just devastated, I guess. Yeah,
Just doing
because
her thing.
she broke up with the poor guy because he was poor, and like that was the love of her life. And then she was greedy, so she wanted to make this marriage work with the rich guy, but he fucking hated her, like just
I wonder if he
nah,
killed
he
her
didn't kill
too.
her. In fact, not killing her was probably a worse punishment because she has to live with all that misery and rejection, 2 rejections.
Jeez
Yep.
Louise.
So this is the kind of shit that I grew up watching, and that's why I do comedy because
I was just gonna say, I wonder why you're an artist.
oh shit. All right.
Um.
So let me give you some
Okay.
flashcard questions, okay? So let's say you're a 20-something-year-old woman, right? You're basically the protagonist. You're an
Yes.
orphan, you're working class, no college education, no money. You have a deadbeat older brother who owes money all over town, including loan sharks, okay? And the loan sharks, they're basically gangsters and thugs. They come after you,
Okay.
you, the poor girl, to repay your brother's debt. What do you do?
Um. I can't flee because I don't have the money to flee, do I?
No. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um.
You're trapped.
I'd probably give him some hand jobs. I'm not gonna use, won't
Very
use my
honest
mouth
job.
hole. Won't go all the way, but buy me some time. No? Well, how about now? I don't know how to do it. I feel like okay.
You've never given hand jobs
To
before?
myself,
Yeah. Yeah, so you're a
but I
professional.
could
You've
only
done it.
do it if I was in the position of. So I'd have to like go behind them because I could. I
Yes.
wouldn't be
You would
able
have
to
to
do this,
stand.
but I could
Hmm.
do like this, and then
Yeah.
I would make a. What are they called? What are the like the little voodoo dolls where you have pins?
That's a voodoo doll, yeah.
Voodoo doll. I'd make a voodoo doll
Yeah,
of my brother, and I would like stab it with some pins gently,
okay, great.
just to annoy.
Gently. Not too hard.
Yeah,
Just
he's
a
still
little.
family.
Little pricks. Yeah, you can't kill the guy. You don't want to murder your brother. Yeah.
No,
All right, cool. Very good. All right. Okay, so let's say you're the same 20-something-year-old woman, okay? And you're a tour guide in Bali, in Indonesia, and you're responsible for guiding a group of 2 men and one woman, the people I just mentioned. The woman is engaged to one of the men, and the other man is her ex-boyfriend. And it's hella awkward when you're driving them around in your little van, taking them to restaurants, taking them to sights to see. It's so awkward. What do you do?
Um, well, you want a big tip, so I'll just be nice.
Yeah. Money wins, huh?
Yeah, like I would be really nice to them. It's awkward. If I can diffuse the awkwardness, then
Yeah.
I would probably get a better tip. I would give them all hand
Right.
jobs. Same answer. Same answer.
Very good answer. I like that answer. All
Hand
right.
jobs
So
and
okay, you're
voodoo dolls. To be clear, both elements are being carried over.
but the voodoo dolls, you would do more hand jobs for them, right? Like you wouldn't be pricking them with pins.
It would be actually, yeah. The voodoo doll would be of all of us. It would be the couple, the ex, and me, and then I would rub all their little cloth genitalia.
Okay. Very good. All right. So, okay, you're the same woman.
Great.
All right. You're the same chick. All right. The two men are now in love with you. Okay. And one
Okay.
of the guys is actually your next door neighbor, the poor guy. Okay. He's very poor, but he's charming as hell, handsome, gentle, tall, intelligent, well spoken. The other guy is rich as hell, but obnoxious. He's a playboy. He's violent. He screams a lot. He's rude. He's selfish. You get the picture, right? And you're at the poor guy's house and y'all are about to fuck. All right? Like
Wait,
y'all are about to fuck. Shit is about to go down. You
all
and the
three
poor
of
guy.
us?
No, no, you and the poor guy. You're at the
Oh,
poor
okay.
guy's house
Okay.
and y'all are about it's like, you're like down to fuck. But right outside the poor guy's door, you hear the rich guy shouting your name. What do you do?
Oh my lord. I guess. Oh my lord. What's the rich guy's name?
Jaemin. Chung Jaemin.
I would have sex with the poor guy, but scream the rich guy's name. So they're both getting a little something.
Yeah, nobody's excluded.
No one. Maybe give them both a little. Well, yeah, too many. No voodoo dolls for this
Perfect.
round. Maybe an extra voodoo doll.
Yeah,
Before we
whatever you
finish the
couldn't
question,
do
I
for.
was gonna choose the rich girl.
Why? She wasn't even part of this equation.
I would choose the rich because then it's an out.
Ah.
Like if I was the lady and these two guys were like, "Hey, lady, we like you," and I was like, "Oh, well, I'm a lady who likes
I'm a dyke.
ladies."
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't be
Yeah,
mad
I want to
about
marry
that.
the rich chick. Yeah. Oh, I love that.
I'm gonna get the rich lady
I
over here.
love that. Both perfect answers. They're both perfect answers.
I don't want to hurt anyone's
Yeah.
feelings.
Yeah. It would be unfair to both of you. So I'm going to go with option number 3, which is her.
Mhm.
Oh, such a
Amen.
good answer.
Sorry, rich guy. Sorry, poor guy.
All right. Last flashcard question. You're doing so great. This is great.
I'm having
Yeah.
a
All right.
blast.
So the rich woman is engaged to the rich guy who hires you as her gallery assistant. Okay. So the rich chick, shows some interest, but she has different reasons. Okay. The reason why she hires you as her gallery assistant is because she wants to keep an eye on you since her fiance is always coming over to your house, always spending time with you, etc. Okay. One day, the rich woman's mom shows up at the gallery that you work at, and she beats the living hell out of you and screams at you, curses at you, and humiliates you. What do you do?
Oh man. So this is rich lady's mom is
Yeah,
doing this to
beating the
me.
shit out of you.
Oh my lord. Well, if I think I would get some bleach and I would put it in a little baggie so it looks like cocaine. Yeah. And then and then I would find the old lady and I would put it in the purse because either A, she's gonna snort the cocaine and it's gonna be bleach, and she probably will because she's got an anger issue, anger problem. She's probably gonna, she likes to, so then that'll
Yeah.
hurt her, or call the cops
Mm.
on her and be like, "Hey, that lady over there, I think I saw her have a little bag of cocaine." And the cops come and they give her some flack.
Yeah. Okay. So you would frame her.
I would frame her with fake cocaine. Framing and cocaine.
Is that always how you say cocaine? Cocaine?
I remember hearing, I think it was John Mulaney did a bit where he said cocaine like that. He said cocaine. And then I found out this morning he's in
It's
rehab
hilarious.
for
For
cocaine. So I
cocaine.
think it's just in the headspace.
Oh god, so good. All right, that's the end of the flashcard series. Beautiful job. You applause. So good. I loved
Applause
your
to
answers.
us. We did a beautiful
Yeah.
job. Grace,
So good.
I
Yeah.
always like working with you or doing anything that we are on together. So this was really enjoyable, and I'm really happy this happened.
Thanks so much. It was so lovely having you, and yeah, hopefully we'll meet again soon in the after pandemic times. It'll be soon. We'll see each other soon. So next week we're going to be talking about the hit TV series Crash Landing on You, which is currently streaming on Netflix. So if you're on Netflix, if you're in the United States, it's available for you to see. Feel free to binge it, and then you could follow along with us next week when we're talking about it. And I'll be dropping some Korean TV knowledge and Korean history knowledge on that as well, so please get into it. If you have any questions for me, please feel free to email me at kdramaschool@gmail.com, and follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, follow us on TikTok. All the handles are the same, at kdramaschool. And if you want to learn about our show some more or keep up with other updates, you can always visit our website, kdramaschool.com. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next week.